Alrighty, welcome back to the big show. Jamel Hartman here. It's the Daily Hour brought to you by the BAC Group of Companies, Medical House Lenders, and People's Pharmacy. Folks, please don't forget to subscribe on our website. Follow us on all of our social media channels to stay up to date with all that we have going on. Help us grow beyond the mic as we do our part to continue to improve our community. Just a big update. We did let you know that we once again will be having general election coverage on February 18th. We will be joined by guest commentators. We will have former OBA Minister Patricia Gordon-Pamplin in studio with us. We will have the first leader of the OBA, interim leader, John Barrett. And we'll also have former Premier of Bermuda, Dr. the Honorable Ewart Brown, along with Taj Donville Otterbridge, a young Bermudian who is very vocal and social justice advocate. So we'll be having a great lineup. We'll have our various members of our team at the headquarters and amongst the people speaking with you about how you're feeling about the election. So you don't want to miss our election night coverage. We are going to be available and there for you. I want to just give a shout out to Channel 82. Not only will we be streaming on all of our social media platforms, we will also be on Channel 82. Big props to Crimson Media and Lamone Woods out there. So we'll have access to you and for you on election night. So stick with us, rock with us, and we'll do our best to bring you the best election night coverage for Decision 2025. Without further ado, let's bring in our guest for the day. We've got OBA Senator. He's running for Constituency 25, candidate for Constituency 25 for the One Bermuda Alliance. Let's give a warm TDH welcome to Dr. Douglas Couto. Greetings, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. I'm great. I've been really enjoying the show this morning, especially Maya's segment, which I think is a really, really important topic for us.
Well, you know what? I mean, you're a finance guy. I'm very proud of Maya, and I don't think people. Maya hasn't slept. You know, she was texting me last night, and it was not that I was ignoring her. I was just watching the game. And Maya, I'm so sorry, but she's been working on that story, and this is why I keep telling people. You know, I think they see us for an hour a day, see her for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, but there's so much that goes into that, especially when you have to wait on people. And Maya does these stories without bias. She does them because of public interest. And I am grateful, forever grateful to her. And she's, you know, we've got Simone Vaughn, who's also part of the team, along with Teo, who are really working on stories to bring to the Bermudian people. Because I'll be honest with you, sir. Before she mentioned it to me, I hadn't even thought of it. I'm going to be honest with you. I hadn't. So if I hadn't thought of it, I guarantee you, I mean, I'm not the moral barometer or whatnot, but many people probably hadn't thought of it. But since you appreciated that segment, and, you know, obviously the leader of the One Bermuda Alliance, Jaron Richardson, shared his opinion. Let's start with that. Like, what are your thoughts on campaign financing?
Well, definitely support some kind of reform, and I think Jaron covered it really well. You know, I probably couldn't get too much in the details of what it would look like because we'd have to do a little bit of research. But you know, I think Maya really covered well some of the topics. So, like, should small donations be reported to the public? You know, that I think is something worth thinking about. Should big donations? Yes. Should there be spending limits? You know, probably yes. Should there be reporting of big donations? Probably yes. And then, you know, something they do in other jurisdictions is, in fact, the campaigns are actually funded by the government. Do you know what I mean? Like, look, if you have a party, you just get X and you get Y, and there's like a formula, and maybe you don't even allow public donations. Like, those are some of the variables. Certainly, some kind of reform would definitely be fitting in with the part of our platform, which is about being accountable to the people. And I know that. You know, my colleagues in the caucus, I'm pretty sure it'll be one of our robust discussions among the 36 of us coming to a landing on the details of what we would like to support. Because I think Maya's piece also outlined a lot of the issues that perhaps reasonable people could disagree on, but directionally, yes, reform.
Indeed, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. And just before we get into the meat of today's conversation, just you've been on the show before, so you're not a stranger. Right. But there are some people who may be tuning in for the first time. Some may not be familiar with you. They may be in different constituencies. But I always say, you know, it starts with the constituency, but one person from one constituency could end up being your finance minister. So tell the audience a bit about your background and what it is that you do.
Sure. Professionally, I've been working in the insurance reinsurance industry for like 18 years. I have a PhD in computer science, so I'm not a medical doctor. But since here in Bermuda, the styling is for people to use the term doctor. I do use it because other people are. So you could maybe just call me Doug. Yeah, so my background is technology, and that's how I got started in that industry. And now I'm basically an executive. I run a team of people who do technical work. I've got a family. I've got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old. I have a 22-year-old daughter she was 22 in less than a month, and she's graduating from university. I have a fabulous wife who is a very highly experienced HR executive. And first I want to say thank you to my family for supporting me in the work that I'm doing, because I know they're paying a price. I did get home to watch the Super Bowl and make wings and nachos with my boys. They're not so worried about the football game, but the nachos, that was a highlight. They were into that. I've been involved in the One Bermuda Alliance since 2020. I kind of stepped in on that snap election kind of as a favor for a friend. There's another story there, but I'm not going to get into it now. And I remember I came home to my wife. I said, "Oh, sweetie, look, I just have to do this thing for 5 weeks, and then we'll be back to normal. So don't worry, it'll all be over in 5 weeks." And here we are, basically 4.5 years later. I've been in the Senate for 2 years and serving as effectively the OBA shadow finance minister. It's a good fit for my background and my training. When I was in university, I also studied finance and have some qualifications through that there. So it's a natural fit for me.
Cool. Yeah, love and family to allow you to put up with what you're gonna be what you're already putting up with. So politics and family, I don't think people understand how it can take a toll on such. I think we've spoken with some people off the racket on how it's impacted them. So I get it. And with children at those tender ages, 10 and 12, yeah, it's a lot of time away from them. So I think the general public doesn't appreciate that enough. But let's get into your constituency. You're contesting a constituency that has really been either way. In the last election, it was won by the PLP. And prior to that, it was won by the PLP in a by-election. The OBA had won it prior to that. I believe that's the seat Dale Butler had held for some years, but he had to work extremely hard to hold on to it.
And let me tell you, I hear about him every time I knock on the door.
I could imagine. I mean, he was, look, I'll never forget this. I don't know what election it was, but Dale Butler had won that seat. It may have been against Gina Spence one year. And while everyone was out partying at Court Street and whatnot, people were like, "Oh, Butler's out there thanking his constituents." That's the kind of person that he was. So in saying that, it's considered a marginal.
Yeah, that's fair.
At this point, what are you hearing on the doorstep that you believe can swing it your way?
So 25, right? It goes from big houses on Harbor Road. It goes over to the Railway Trail. It's got Spring Hill. It's got Chunk of Ord Road, Tribe Road 2. It's got a real mix of a real slice of Bermuda, okay? It's got all different old style family neighborhoods and neighborhoods that have more turnover. I can tell you, having been knocking on doors for 3 years, everybody is sick of the government. Okay, there's a handful of people who say, I'll say, "Hey, how are you doing?" I say, "I've got nothing to complain about." And say, "Okay, let me move on here." I got you. But as a rule, and even, let's just call it deep green, people who say, "Well, I used to be a delegate," or "I used to be, I'm a PLP supporter," but, and then, then I have to sit down and then I hear about the upsetness. That's a huge theme. That's like the political theme, in terms of what's impacting people, really cost of living. That's the thing. Now, that means different things for different people, right? The seniors are like, how do I pay my health insurance and buy groceries? People with children are really concerned about the education and the cost for private school, or maybe if they're like, middle class, they're worried about their mortgage and trying to be on the housing ladder. Young Bermudians, if you can find them, which is very hard to do canvassing, they're sort of saying, how do I even pretend I could build a life here and get housing for myself and put my roots down here? So we see all the different aspects, but ultimately I put them all under the cost of living. Obviously, they break out as like healthcare, education, housing, and stuff like that.
And I'm glad you said cost of living can mean so many different things, and we'll touch on that in a bit as well. Go a bit deeper on that, but I was challenged by one of the Daily Hour sponsors on Saturday to watch the PLP rally. And, I watched a press conference by Sir John, I think last week as well. And, one of my colleagues said this weekend to me, said, you really have no problem saying sorry and taking accountability. And I said, yeah, because I take risk, and people who take risk, you mess up, right? And it happens. One of the things that seems to be missing in politics, regardless of party sometimes, is accountability, right? And I guess what has been said about the OBA is really turning the tide. So, for instance, the thing about pension, we gave seniors this pension increase over and over, and well, a former finance minister in the OBA told seniors, money doesn't grow on trees. Where do you believe the Bermuda Progressive Labour Party have gone wrong with the economy? And how would an OBA government fix it?
Well, let me just step on right into the pension thing, because I know, it's a major PLP talking point. They want to make it sound like the OBA is against seniors' pensions. And the reality, nothing could be further from the truth. And frankly, Jamel, they will say all kinds of things that are, let me put it delicately, mistaken. We are on the record numerous times in the public and in the legislature, on the record, talking about how we support taking care of our seniors. We support pensions increase. And by the way, the PLP, it's the law. They have to do it. It's not like David Burt woke up and was like, maybe today I'll increase the pensions to see how I feel, right? So, it's in the law that they increase. So we definitely want to support the pensions. The reality is the pension funds are running out of money. Okay, that's the reality. So I think people can appreciate that we have a major concern here, because yes, we have to support the seniors today. We have to support what I like to call the junior seniors. And then I'm talking about myself in 15, 20 years, when I come to draw on my social insurance, will it be there? And I think it's an incredibly fair question for the public to ask the Progressive Labour Party government, what's your plan for making sure that money will be there? And in fact, Minister Curtis Dickinson at the time was finance minister. He laid out, the way the issues that have to be addressed, whether it be, more people paying into the pensions, social insurance, less money being paid out, more money being paid in, or retire later. Those aren't like what I would call value judgments. Those are like just mathematical options to do it. And so a government will have to figure out which of those options to apply. And I noticed that the PLP has been incredibly silent on that. They only want to talk about the payouts that they'll do, but they never talk about the other side of the equation, because it's tough and it's not a fun topic. Now, we can promise that we will carry out an appropriate pension reform that will both ensure the health of the pensions for the seniors today and the seniors of tomorrow, and we will do it in a consultative way, right, that is fair. I mean, you can't just not solve the problem. So that's what I kind of have to say about pensions there. On the state of the economy, right, we kind of have a multiple prong track on this. And I think the thing we're most concerned about is the local economy. Again, the Premier in his capacity as finance minister and the PLP government, they've been touting this massive economic success. And IB has done really well. 90% of the GDP growth has been driven by IB and local financial services. That's from the government's own figures. So from before COVID to 2023, which is where we have to end of 23, which is where we have the latest breakdowns, only 0.4% growth per year in what I like to call the local economy. That's essentially none. So I view it as sort of like a crisis there. Right? So some of our approaches are obviously cut red tape. We constantly hear from people about they're trying to do something and government's going too slowly, or government's not being transparent or fair enough, right? So that's step one. We want to figure out how to get more investment in Bermuda. It could be local or overseas investment. Do projects that are hiring Bermudians. And again, that comes also down to red tape. It comes down to going out there and aggressively marketing Bermuda internationally. We've done some consultation with people who kind of outline that, they've had to sort of drag people from government sort of kicking and screaming off on these marketing trips to address segments of things that could come to Bermuda and maybe add something into the economy, a type of business, or grow a certain type of business. So we think that there's room there. Certainly the OBA government in the past did a very good job of attracting lots and lots of inward direct investment. We want to cut payroll taxes for new young Bermudian hires to incentivize their hiring as well. And we're certainly going to look very closely at the local tax system, especially for like retailers and local businesses, because we know that that's quite a burden on them for cash flows and adds on to the cost. So there's a lot of other things. I might have to stop there, lest I bore the audience a lot of minutia.
No. And thank you for providing that stuff. And audience, continue to send your questions and comments. We'll definitely get to you. We will get to you in a few. But as I'm listening to you, I think one of the things that stands out in politics is often people say a lot of stuff and then they don't follow through. I mean, Maya just did a story today about campaign financing, right? The OBA also in 2012 had a lot of things in their platform. I just mentioned that, the whole government money doesn't grow on trees by a former OBA minister. But why should people, like the general public, right? When the fear-mongering takes place, one of the things is the One Bermuda Alliance government, if they're successful and become government, why should, tell the people why they should trust that you're not going to take from them.
Gotcha. Well, look, at some level you have to trust. Okay. I can tell you this, you do know what you're getting now with the PLP government. That's something that and the outcome's not been good. Okay. That's a known quantity. Why would you expect that government to change how it operates? And why would you expect them to magically be able to start doing a good job? So think about that. Number two, people who know me, people in the constituency, know about the work I've been doing, how I show up. People who know me personally or take the time to actually read about the things that I say, that I write about, rather than, the things that are said, let's call it mistakenly by the PLP government. Can also see some of the detail behind my thinking and how I operate, right? They can meet my colleagues. Most of us have been working 3, 4, 5 years, no money, no pay, as a political party on a serious mission to bring success back to this island for our children. So I think that's indicative of the commitment. Members of my colleagues, our team, they don't have government boards. They don't have government contracts. I mean, directly given government contracts on a personal basis and things like that. So, they are working really, really hard. And I think that's an indicative of our good faith and our passion. And, I'll leave it with this too. You will have a chance to put us in, and I urge people to do that, and then check back in 4 to 5 years, and then you'll have your chance to assess us. And I'm happy to be assessed on our record. And I know my colleagues are as well.
All right, audience, I'll get to some of your questions now. We've got Shamari Sky. He's asking, in your opinion, why did the OBA lose the last election?
So I wasn't involved running up to the election. So let me just caveat that. And I was not involved in the inner workings of the party. I literally rocked up 4 weeks beforehand, walked around in Constituency 27 and stood at the polls. frankly, some disorganization, some people not really working together as a team, things like that. Now, Jaren has talked a lot about this. We've made a ton of changes since then. Some people have sort of left the party who were probably not the team players that we required for our mission. We didn't have candidates in all the seats. We didn't have a candidate in 25 properly until the last minute, which is like a winnable seat. I can't explain the why. I'm just, those are observations that are frankly from the outside because I wasn't around that I think anybody else could have made as well. But the difference now is we have candidates all the seats. We've had candidates working a very long time in many of the seats. We've got a great platform, and we've been working together as a team, and have sort of built a unity of purpose and passion.
Well, one of the things that stood out to me and stands out to me, and sorry for that I'm referencing the Bermuda Progressive Labor Party a lot, but this is an election where you're pretty much going against them, the FDM, Independents, and Imperial Group. But using them as the government, one of the things that I noticed and a couple of people have brought to my attention is the PLP's strategy to win political elections is to keep focusing on the past. Mm. And one of the things I noticed the other night is as I was listening to the various speeches, the emotional part, race and the parts about, the one man, one vote, and things of that nature, things that literally happened before this administration. So it's like a lot of the things they were, saying, some of the people were things that happened before this administration. How does the OBA, whether it's ties to the UBP or what people deem one of the worst only one-term governments ever, how do you get people to see beyond the past that this is a different party, different mentality? This is, how do you respond to that?
Well, first, come and talk to us. Come meet the candidates, actually listen to what we're saying. Second, like you just said something that's actually arguably incorrect, ties to the UBP. There are like 2-3 former UBP people are cabinet ministers in the PLP government. You see what I'm saying? So that's a convenient whipping post for the PLP to distract people. The other thing I would say, let's talk about history and emotion. So you can see all these books behind me. Some of you who are watching maybe can see a lot of them are Bermuda books. I'm a bit of a student of Bermuda history, and books are my weakness. And look, I'm a Anglo-Portuguese Bermudian guy. I've been working hard to understand, what's going on with Black Bermudian history to the extent that I can. And I acknowledge the history there. It's important, and we have to consider it. It's hugely important. And if you look at my colleagues in our caucus, it's more Black Bermudians than others. So it would basically be insulting to them, I would suggest, to say that those issues are not at the forefront of people's minds as we as a team work through our policy differences and things like that. And we talk a lot about emotion. And let me give you a story about emotion. And I'm going to have to leave out some details, but I was canvassing this weekend and I spent some time in a person's apartment. And they were breaking down in tears, talking to me about the BHC's failure to find them an appropriate home for their situation. I can't say any more details. So that's also emotion, okay? And I hear emotion from people who are watching their children choosing to leave Bermuda and not come back because of the state that the country's in. So that's emotion of things today. So I think, let me leave those comments at that, because we want to acknowledge the past, learn from the past, understand the impact of the past on today, and use that to forge our path forward from today for our future. Versus, I would say the PLP is frankly trying to distract the voters from their poor track record.
But why? Because we've spoken about this on this show before, and just for clarity for the audience, if you don't know what Dr. Couto was talking about, both Honorable Minister Wayne Furbert and Kim Swan are former UBP leaders, and Jamel Simmons, I think he's been about 3 political parties. He also was a UBP MP. And we had a question last week, a trivia question. There are three former UBP leaders running in this election. John, Kim Swan, and the Honorable Minister Wayne Furbert. And it's interesting because none of them are running for the One Bermuda Alliance, to your point. But I think it's important I think what I'm trying to understand, and you can't answer this, is I guess why is it so easy to tie the OBA to the UBP versus the PLP when they have the last person to lead the UBP as a sitting MP, a former UBP leader who's a minister, as well as a former UBP MP. And I think the answer for me would probably be if we go back to Maya's segment, well, who do the people who financially supported the UBP behind the scenes, who do they support? That's probably what they'll go to. I don't know, but I take your point on the surface. Want to add anything more to that?
Yeah.
Okay.
This strategy that the PLP has may not be working for them as well as they like. They have a quite inflammatory flyer that is basically slanderous. And I had someone, talk to me about it. They're like, I got this, and they're like, yeah, I voted PLP, but this is like, one, I'm not interested in hearing about this. I want to hear about solutions from you today. And they're talking about stuff that happened 12 years ago, So I'm worried about what's happening today. Okay. And that was in a deep PLP area. Now, that's not going to be true for everybody, but I'm just saying, and again, I don't have access to what everybody in Bermuda is thinking and doing. My experience has been when I interact with people on a one-on-one personal basis, and we start talking about their specific issues and the OBA specific plans to address those issues, they perk up. So.
Well, we've got Sean Smith. He's asking, Sean Smith over in Portugal. I remember that. Would the OBA strengthen Public Accounts Committee so I don't have to hear about looking under the hood regarding Bermuda finances when parties get into office?
Yes. That is a committee that's under-resourced and is subject to a lot of political manipulation by people not showing up or hamstringing its operations. So yes, we would strengthen that, and that would come under a component of our platform about accountability to the public. I'm picking it up to read it verbatim, but we have a thing in there about making committee meetings public. And the way that committee works now is everyone on the committee has to show up and vote to agree to make it public. So you can see why that's difficult. So short answer, yes.
Alrighty. We've got another question. Michael Daniels was asking earlier, who would be responsible for tracking donations? That was how we began the conversation after Maya's story, but how would we track that?
I don't know. Perhaps the parliamentary registrar, perhaps some other watchdog. We'd have to figure that out. So
I actually appreciate that answer. I really do. It's better than lying, and it's better than playing politics. Seriously.
Look, you're gonna have to pay someone to do the work.
Yeah.
That's how it comes down to. There's gonna have to be an office. They're gonna have to collect data. They're gonna have to audit the parties. They're gonna have to publish the data. It doesn't magically happen. And let me leave it at that.
All right. We've got a question. Charles H. Jeffs II, he's asking, if the OBA were to win, would Dr. Couto be open to Curtis Dickinson serving as finance minister? A coalition government would send a strong message to the electorate in doing what's best for Bermuda.
Absolutely. For me and the people in our party, our mission is about the better outcome from Bermuda. We're not doing this for position. If that makes sense. A lot of us, in fact, are kind of, in different ways, and works differently for different people, have by doing this work have negatively impacted their personal careers or let me just leave it at that. It looks different for each candidate, but yeah, whatever is going to get the best outcome for Bermuda, we're supportive of. Although the one thing we're not supportive of is a progressive Labour Party government, because we believe their actions and the outcomes that they've produced have demonstrated poor outcomes for our country. No, I can't hear you. Jamel, just, I couldn't hear what you were saying, but I can see the question.
Sorry. I said, yeah, the question, audience, if you're just listening, is what are your thoughts on MPs that will possibly increase funds available for pensioners, less MPs with a slightly higher salary and still sufficient for pensioners?
Yeah, we actually have on our platform an item that says review the existing Westminster system, consider ways to reduce the cost of government, improve the quality of political candidates, and create a better functioning parliamentary system. So the short answer is, yeah, that's definitely on the table for us to look at. It would require, I think, like maybe some constitutional changes, but I'm sure Bermuda got behind it that would not be an issue. So,
all righty. Let's, look, tell the audience why you believe One Bermuda Alliance is the best group to lead Bermuda at this point in 2025.
Sure. I mean, that's the crux of the question. Okay. And for me, it's a combination of things. It's about the expertise that we have on our team, right? We have many people with great track records. It's about the diversity of our team. And we have people from across all walks of life, blue collar, white collar, pink collar, like the helping services. We've got entrepreneurs, we've got quote unquote business people like myself. It's about the team that we've developed and the way that we operate. And we take our principles very seriously. It's about the ideas that we have and the quality of the ideas. And it's about what I would put to you will be our relentless focus on execution. That means getting it done and getting results for the people. Like I said, none of us are in this thing for like a position. Like, oh yeah, like I don't want to win. I don't want to get a seat and sit on the back bench so I can go hang out up there on Fridays. Like I honestly literally have better things to do. And a lot of my colleagues do. We want to become part of the government because we want to get the outcomes to help the people. And that's why I got into this. And, when I'm walking around, when I'm meeting people where they are and I'm seeing their situations, I'm like, this is not good enough. Mm-hmm. And I know that I know that many of my colleagues share that sentiment. And this is our way of pitching in to improve Bermuda.
Indeed. If you're unsuccessful at the polls, how do you plan to stay politically engaged?
Sure. So if I don't win my seat, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to probably spend a little bit of time with my family, and we're going to have some tough conversations. I'm going to see what's happening in my career. But generally my plan is to keep doing what I've been doing. All right. I might have to take the foot off the gas for a little bit to kind of catch my breath, and then get back into it.
Fair enough. Charles H. Jeffers II says, I appreciate that response, Dr. Couto. I wish all candidates were running for Bermuda and not against anyone else or for their own personal gain. One of the challenges that some of the candidates who've come on this show have stated is that it's really hard to see 11 to 1,300 people in the span of 6 weeks. And although some have been candidates for a while and had more time, even then you're not going to get to see every person. So where can those who may not get the opportunity to speak with you, go to learn more, and maybe your plans for not just the constituency, but for Bermuda?
Yeah, great question. Well, we have a great website, oba.bm/team. And for me and all of my colleagues, there's a web page with our emails, our phone numbers, and we each have a sort of personal statement, or most of us do, about our priorities. I'm easy to find on Twitter and Facebook as well, and Instagram, although I'm not on there as actively as I'd like to be. So hit me up. And I think if people live in the constituency, they've probably been inundated with paperwork that has my face, my name, my number on it. So I do look forward for them to reach out. It's hard to reach people. They're working, they're traveling. Even if you go by their house, 3-4 times, if you're just not in sync, you may miss them.
Indeed. And before you go, I ask everyone this final question. What final message would you say to the people of Bermuda as we are 1 week and a day out from this 2025 general election?
I appreciate the opportunity. We are, in my view and the view of my colleagues, we are a turning point in Bermuda. We have things like the corporate income tax, which may provide great opportunity, but also come with great risk. We have observed 8 years of POP governance and the decline of the island under that governance and the shrinking of the economy and the shrinking of the population. The vision that I have and that my colleagues have is of a Bermuda that's growing, that has opportunity and prosperity. And I strongly urge all voters to vote for the One Bermuda Alliance because we have the full team, we have the plan, and we have the leadership, and we're ready to become the government on the 19th of February and start taking positive actions to improve Bermuda and opportunity for everybody.
Indeed. Dr. Couto, thank you so much for trusting our platform, coming on today. All the best going forward. And it's going to be interesting. Next Tuesday, you got a week. Tell your family you just got 1 week left.
I already had that conversation this morning. Let's just leave it like that.
Have a good one, sir. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
All right, Dr. Douglas Couto, folks, again, if you appreciated the conversation this morning, do us a favor, give us a thumbs up, a love, a like. Make sure you share that conversation with your friends, your family, your colleagues. We're going to take a final break. Come back. I want to see if anyone knows the answer to this Bermuda trivia question. Seriously. You better not get this wrong. Don't let me down, audience. Minute 40. We'll be back.